Hey coaches, we're back. Help support this free resource for athletes and coaches by hitting subscribe. Make sure you like and comment your thoughts or engage with us through our social media platforms. We need you to help continue to grow our brand, and it all starts by joining our team of over 500 subscribers. Click the bell to get live notifications of new content coming your way in 2021. Welcome to another episode of Three Down Development. Really excited to be joined by Myles Gibbon today to talk a little bit about quarterbacks. Coach, I'll let you do your own intro, but really excited to have you here today, and thanks for making the time.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Yeah, name's Myles Gibbon. We run the QB movement out here in Montreal, Canada. I was born and raised here, played CJF football, fortunate enough to get a full scholarship to play Division I football at the University of South Alabama. Finished there in 3 years, transferred back to York University where we actually played and met each other. I got my master's degree in kinesiology, studying the development of quarterbacks, looking at how we predict and look at how good quarterbacks are going to be in the future. From there, I was fortunate enough to go to the CFL Combine, and after I didn't get drafted, that idea of what I wanted to do for the rest of my life started popping into my brain. And initially, I wanted to get into the coaching realm, but it took this turn where I knew that quarterbacks were not getting the development and the work that they needed here in Canada through myself personally. I wasn't taught the I wasn't even taught the questions to ask. So my idea really kind of went to how can I help and impact as many quarterbacks as I can, and that's where the idea of the QB movement started out in Toronto. Moved to Ottawa where I started coaching a few quarterbacks for a couple of years, and then when I returned back to Montreal, everything kind of just blew up. And fortunately, now I've been training quarterbacks full time for the past 6 years. We've trained over 300 quarterbacks this year alone, even during the pandemic. We do online training for guys all across the world. We have quarterbacks, out in Japan, Brazil, Mexico, Belgium. It's been an absolute blessing. Absolute love for this position. So it's definitely what I've always wanted to do and what we've been fortunate enough to do now for the last little while. And now, just trying to help, spread and give as much knowledge as we can out there. So no, man, thanks for having me on, and looking forward to answering some questions with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were kind of talking, in the pre-interview just about, coaching quarterbacks. Obviously, it's a unique position in sport, never mind just football, but in sport. And, the demands on that position are super high. Working with quarterbacks in high school age kids through my involvement in summer football, guys that have aspirations to play in university, and, are somewhere in that process of working through high school. It's just become so clear to me that developing confidence, real confidence in their ability to perform is so key to actually being able to recognize those goals. Um, but that's something that's hard to do. It's easy to say we want our quarterback to play confident, but actually getting that type of authentic confidence and performance out of your quarterback position, in competitive games is obviously a challenge. What do you see as kind of the barriers or the things that are in the way, or the places quarterbacks are going to get stuck, or even coaches are going to get stuck in trying to get, that confident performance out of quarterbacks?
I mean, confidence, obviously it's one of those things that, people love to talk about. But I don't think there's a clear understanding of what it is. When you ask me, having a guy be confident, I think it's, there's levels to it, right? So, we have some guys who might need to be more physically confident. We have some guys who might need to be more mentally confident. And then I think there's an experience confidence factor too, right? So it's being able to assess what that guy needs, right? So, experience confidence is that idea, does that guy get on field reps, right? So if a kid is coming in as a freshman and looking, to start as his first year, or especially after this whole pandemic thing where, kids were off a year, they're lacking that experience confidence, right? Getting them game time reps, right? Or 12 on 12 reps, that can only be built through on-field actions, right? We cannot build that in any other way because it's an experience confidence. So that one's probably the toughest one to simulate for a guy. There's mental confidence, right? Does a guy have the, tenacity and the willingness to, put his head in the playbook, right? Know all the plays, know all the assignments, make sure that the guys around him understand what they're supposed to do to make his life easier, right? So there's that idea of being able to mentally, understand the game at another level than other guys, right? And then obviously there's the, the physical confidence, right? Can he throw? Can he move his feet, right? Is he stable? Is he in control? The little things that a guy would benefit from, doing off-season work with a quarterback coach or his coach from his team. We are fortunate enough, when it comes to, just the mental side is, we had 75 quarterbacks in a 10-week online program just throughout these past 10 weeks. We just finished it up where, instead of a kid playing, Fortnite or playing Xbox, he was learning how to read coverages. We're talking 8-year-olds, university guys learning how to read coverages, how to understand concepts, make protection slides, identify blitzers, all that kind of stuff. And then, throughout, this time off, our kids, in their basement working on their mechanics, right? Are they looking up drills? Are they finding ways to get better, right? So those senses of confidence, a lot of it happens away from in season, right? So it's learning in the off season how you can get better, once you hit the field. And then obviously, like I said at the beginning, man, experience, right? You got to know what to do when you're on the field, and you can only build that by actually doing it.
Yeah, and it's something, obviously there's so many unique challenges right now with team sports across, the landscape of team sports, but especially with football, typically bigger teams, obviously different places in the country have had different rules throughout, this time. But I mean, here based in Ontario, we'll be going into the last football that was played was, 18 months ago at best,
Yeah.
and probably a little more than that. So, I think that taking the time, to whether it's a quarterback or any position right now, to learn more about the game is huge. It's something that we've been trying to do with the summer team I coach as well, doing weekly positional meetings and
Yep.
watching film and trying to help build that confidence. But it'll be really interesting to see when guys get back on the field, how are they able to translate that, and how quickly does that allow them to, build back some of that confidence from the missed reps that you talked about there. That's actually a really good kind of segue into my next question, which is, as a quarterback coach specifically, what are you looking to do in terms of your on-field work to try and create, and whether it's, confidence in a technique that you're working on, or a skill, or just general confidence in yourself in the position? How do you kind of go about that as a quarterback coach once you get on the field with athletes?
I mean, I think the idea is, and I think it's with anything, right? The more you know something, the more you understand it, the more confident you are talking about it, the more confident you are, going over it, right? So, one of our biggest philosophies is, all the quarterbacks that work with us, learn not just the what and the how, but more importantly, the why behind every single little movement they do, right? It's such a technical position where, there's a lot of different ways to do things, but if you don't understand why you're doing it, if you don't understand the different ways of getting to it, whether it's mechanics or footwork, well, then you're never going to be really confident, performing it, right? So a big thing for us and with our quarterbacks is, no matter whether it's a drill, whether it's a movement, whether it's a game time, progression, we go through and we dissect the why behind everything, right? So I can tell right away when, I'll ask a kid a question and I can tell right away, does he know why he's doing this? Or do we need to make sure that he understands? So, it's part of our philosophy, if you can understand, whether it's in your playbook, whether it's in mechanics, if you can understand how to be perfect, well, you can understand how to manipulate perfection, right? No quarterback's going to throw the same. No quarterback's going to necessarily have the same eye speed and moving through progressions. But if he can understand what it would be to be perfect, well, he's going to know how to manipulate that, to make himself comfortable, make himself a little bit more confident, as you're saying, right? So that's probably the biggest approach for us is.
Yeah, and I think that's, when guy in anything, right? You're teaching anything, understanding the why doesn't just engage the athlete, but it gives them a context to use it when they actually have to go use it in a different setting. And that's one thing, like obviously seeing your page, and there's so much good stuff out there now available to high school athletes. Like I think when I was in high school, I don't remember, and maybe I just wasn't looking, but this amount of stuff that's out there now with social media, the accounts you can follow, like
It's nuts. It's
you could
nuts.
spend a whole day at any position, right? But I'm sure quarterback's one of the most popular, finding places to take in information and learn new things. But if you just see it out of context and try and repeat it, you're not really able to use it because you don't understand that connection to why is it relevant that,
Yep.
my back leg is placed here, or that my arm travels in this path in this instance, or whatever it is. I think that's
I mean, it's a perfect, and I tell this to, our guys all the time, and I tell this to, kids who message me, right, all the time, is I'm saying we're so littered with content, right? There's so much out there, and obviously some of it's going to be bad, right? Not every quarterback coach out there is doing the right things or is teaching it properly. So, that's a big reason why I'm so, strict and so, controlling on understanding why we're doing it, because I want my guys to be able to, go online and watch clips and be like, I understand why this is good, or even more importantly, understand why this is bad, right? So whether it's a good coach or bad coach, I encourage, any of my quarterbacks, any quarterbacks who message me, any coaches who want to get into this, is not only don't just watch the good ones that man, watch the bad ones, right? If you can take something bad that a coach is trying to do, and I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, it's just, but if you can take something bad that isn't working properly and find a way to flip it and make it into something that can be productive for you, I mean, to me, that's a great sign of someone who knows what they're doing, right? And that leads into confidence, right? If you can look at something and understand why it's not good and be able to flip it into something that is good, well, that means you're pretty damn confident in what you're talking about. So, I wish we had all this content when we were growing up, right? Like Instagram didn't exist. I wish we had it. And that's one of the main reasons why I got onto the social medias, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's great that it's so accessible for whether it's really young kids who are super interested in, maybe learning beyond what the scope of, being at, like you mentioned, working with 8-year-olds. I've
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough with my work with my summer team to spend some time with our Bantam team, like in summer camps and things like that, or winter camps. And it's so great. Sometimes you see these kids who are so young, but they just have such a passion for the game and even
Yeah.
learning the game. I'll get some of the best questions I've ever got as a coach in the summer have been from 10-year-olds that are just loving what we're doing, and that joy of playing the sport is matched also with the interest in learning what's behind it. And
Yeah.
it's so valuable to have that kind of content out there, whether you're coaching for 30 years and you're just trying to stay up to date, or whether you're kind of opening the book for the first time and diving into it.
That's it.
I'm interested as well. We've been talking about, how you develop a confident quarterback and examples of what you're kind of looking for and how you go about that process. I've found a huge thing in any position is when you're coaching a player, or even you're teaching someone anything, you've got to know where they are in their development, right? So what are some of the key things, and obviously the world of quarterback mechanics is, a master class. It's not a half-hour YouTube video. But what are some things that you might look for? Just you're seeing somebody play catch, throw the football, that a high school coach could look for and say, okay, if they're doing this and this, then they're probably in a more advanced stage. If I'm seeing this or this mistake or this movement strategy or pattern, then then this has got to be the priority for us to fix. How do you kind of prioritize that assessment of where guys are at in their development?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, for me, I'm very, like I said, I'm very specific on, certain things. So even when a new quarterback will come in, or I don't do it in the sense of like, I won't run sessions and have new quarterbacks just pull up and, we train and then we try and figure it out. For us, it's very, strict in the sense of a new quarterback will come in and we'll do at least 2-3 weeks of just private training to make sure that, we identify what he's good at and what he's lacking. Right. So, if a quarterback comes in for the first time, we're just playing that pitch and catch, like you said, right. One of the key things that I'm always looking for is, stability and control through the finish of the throw. Right. If a quarterback is able to stabilize the finish of his throw, or hold his finish, as we say, and be comfortable through the release of the throw, that to me tells me that the guy has some sort of control through the actual throwing motion. Right. If you're throwing the football and you're falling over, if you're throwing the football and that weight distribution on your front foot is changing every single time, that to me tells me right away, okay, he has stabilization issues. So most likely meaning his arm path is a little off somewhere, or his arm path just isn't consistent. So usually right off the top, that's one of the main things that we'll look for. How comfortable is he, through the follow through? That usually makes a big difference. And to be honest, like you can tell right away if a guy's worked with someone. You can tell, has a guy had previous training with either their private quarterback coach, or maybe even like an ex QB who's become their high school coach. You can tell pretty quickly. And then from there, it's, like I said at the beginning, it's kind of like resetting mechanics, right? So we know not every quarterback throws the same. And I hate coaches who force all their guys to look exactly the same. It's not going to happen. But to some point, you got to make sure that they understand the fundamentals and the non-negotiables of throwing mechanics, right? There are some things that, we can manipulate. Every quarterback manipulates. And that's why, Aaron Rodgers doesn't look like Drew Lock, right? It's why Tom Brady doesn't look like Patrick Mahomes, because they know how to manipulate, some of the negotiable movements, right? But we need to make sure that, especially young kids really understand the non-negotiable movements, right? The fundamentals, because that's what's going to set the building blocks for their development, right? So, whether it's how they load the football, whether it's their weight transfer, whether it's, what are they doing with their feet through the throw? How are they controlling their chest and their core? Are they utilizing their hips? These are all little things that we have to look at to make sure that they're hitting some of the key checkpoints, right? But at the end of the day, once we teach all those things, it's up to that quarterback to find his own rhythm, his own flow, right? So while we might teach every quarterback to get to a nice high triangle or a nice throwing release, there's going to be situations that call where our arm angle is going to have to change, where we might not be able to use all of our hips, or our footwork is going to have to be manipulated a little bit. So, we cannot build cookie cutter quarterbacks, but we can instill some really important fundamentals and non-negotiables that they can maintain throughout their career. So that's the biggest thing for me. Quarterbacks will come in and, for the first 2-3 weeks, we're really just trying to build some of those non-negotiables, whether it's elbow placement, whether it's controlling through the follow through, whether it's arm path or hip movement. We make sure to focus those things so that once we get, moving into drills or game time situations, that they're being as close to those non-negotiables as possible, but also letting them have some fun with it.
Yeah, and I think your point about, I like the way you put it with negotiables and non-negotiables, right? And I feel like in athletic performance, there's so much variety, like you said. I mean, I played offensive line, and even in the offensive line world, like there's stuff, you're gonna have guys that might play inside that are, like myself, was 6'1", 265. When I was playing, or guys who play tackle that are 6'6" and 300 some pounds. And there are certain things you coach for all of them to do, and there's certain things that are really important for some. But the impact that those non-negotiables can have on everybody, if you're solid in those, is huge. So that really resonated with me there.
That's it.
That was kind of the main stuff we wanted to talk about today. Just what we were talking about, I had one other question kind of come to mind, and that's okay. So if you're coaching a high school program, and you have a quarterback, you have kind of like a 12-week season, at best, right? Like if you're getting a couple weeks, before your first game, maybe 3 weeks before your first game, 6 or 8 week schedule, and then hopefully your playoffs. Obviously, we've talked already about how much stuff, the off season then becomes 3/4 of your year, right? You have to be using that well. So let's say hopefully you're coaching a team and you have 2 or 3 quarterbacks, and you have a year-round plan. Not that kids should be one-sport athletes, but you have a year-round plan for guys to use their time well. You get into season. How do you kind of work those non-negotiable things in season in a way that doesn't, if you're working on some of this stuff year-round, like how do you create that more game-like, like you talked about, that game-like experience? How do you try and keep those non-negotiables showing up in those situations?
I mean, whether you're their coach or whether you're a team coach and you have quarterbacks, is one, it's, you got to be involved all year round, right? So those non-negotiables and those things shouldn't be things that we're working on in season. And I take, a comment from one of my boys down south, Austin, who's with Locked In QB, and he said this to me, you look at some of these SEC coaches and top tier quarterback and offensive coordinators, is their job isn't to fix your mechanics, right? When you get to campus or you get onto that field during season, your job is to know the playbook, execute the playbook, and win games, right? So that's why it's so important in the off season that you're hammering in these non-negotiables, because they aren't things that you're going to be able to consistently work on in season, right? We can really force like arm path non-negotiables in your warm up, and you can harp on them in drills and stuff like that. But when a guy's 12 on 12 or you're in a game, you're not going to start talking to them about their load phase and how they're getting up to the release. Those things need to be instilled into their brain from the get-go, right? So you can't expect to start teaching non-negotiables day one of camp. It's not going to happen, right? One, you don't want to impact that quarterback who's trying to compete for a starting job and tell him, oh, you're doing this wrong, change your motion, all this kind of stuff. You can't be doing that, right? So that's where it's on either the coach or the player to make sure that they are getting that work in the offseason. They're finding the coach to do it. Or if it's you're the coach and these are your guys, well, man, some of those non-negotiables and fundamentals should have been instilled a long time ago, so that once they get on the field, it's not a teach, but more of a reminder, right? It's about reminding them, hey, you know what you're doing, fix it, and not trying to say, hey, this is what you need to do, this is how you fix it. We don't have time for that, right? And it's not the OC's job. Even it's not necessarily the quarterback coach's job to fix mechanics and fix non-negotiables in season. Their job is to make sure you're ready to play that weekend. So I don't think in season is the time to work on those things, right? And that's why, the rise of private coaching has really gone up, especially in Canada over the last few years, is because I think people are starting to realize that the kid who's training in the off season is significantly better than the kid who's not. And it's because all those little things have been instilled into his brain. It's not being taught day one at camp. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question or not, but that's kind of my view on it.
I know I've watched a ton of your stuff on social media. Where can, people watching this video find stuff about QB movement online?
Yeah, you can hit me up most popular probably on Instagram at the QB movement. Any youth quarterbacks, any quarterbacks out there, you got questions, man, my DMs are always open. We do online mechanics training, we do online film sessions, we do everything. So don't hesitate if you want to reach out. Twitter too, the QB movement, Facebook, all that kind of good stuff. Check us out. And yeah, any young guys, man, if you're ready to work, the family's always growing, so you're more than welcome to hit us up.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Coach. And thanks so much for making time for us tonight.
Appreciate it, man. Talk to you soon.